I'm Ashton Addison from Blockwest Capital for Investment Pitch Media, and today on the Crypto Coin Show, we have Anna Vladi, founder of METL. Anna, welcome to the show, and thank you for taking the time today.
Thanks.
You're very welcome. Let's dive into all things cryptocurrency, but more specifically, how do we get the next million people who don't know about cryptocurrencies into Web3 and the entire internet revolutionized, and eventually everyone will probably have a wallet and crypto without even knowing the technical details behind it. But I know that your team is making great strides to help people ramp into the industry. So let's just kick off the conversation with an overview of the team solutions that you and your team have built at METL, and sort of the story behind why you started METL.
Sure. So METL is a decentralized fiat gateway. So we believe we're the first of its kind. Mm-hmm. There's obviously a fintech piece where we deal with banks, which is regulated. Mm-hmm. So in a nutshell, we're a hybrid. So you have your fintech part where you're dealing with the bank, where USD is at custody, and then you obviously have blockchain piece. So that's the part that we're actually decentralizing. And right now we're in beta testing, so the team is kind of controlling it, but the plan is to put it on nodes, put a multi-party computation around it so that it's actually secured by the node validators, and that's the whole how it would be managed. Mm-hmm. We're quite different from others in terms of we're working with banks directly. We don't use cards, so it's an ACH rail integration. So as soon as the ACH is settled on the banking side, the user will get what's called the USDR receipt token, which is backed by USD dollars, but it's not a stable token per se. It just has a very short lifespan where it would just bridge the funds from USD into DeFi. We also don't hold any wallets. We don't manage any wallets. Mm-hmm. So that means we don't hold any balance, any of the user's balance on a balance sheet, basically. Mm-hmm. So that means we skip a step at a minimum where a user directly enters DeFi space. So when they register, they give their Web3 wallet of their choice, and that's where USDR token basically lives. Mm-hmm. So right now we're working on a front end where user from the very beginning can choose what kind of token they want to end up with. If it's Avalanche, if it's Chainlink, it's ETH, whatever that is, right? Mm-hmm. So that experience would be seamless to them. So they have to press a couple of buttons, pass the KYC, there's no buts about it. And after that, it's within seconds, they have AVAX, for example. Mm-hmm. And we are Avalanche blockchain. We are EVM compatible. The plans are to roll it out further, but right now we're concentrating on Avalanche Ecosystem. We want to do it well. And once we do it well, then it's rinse and repeat. Mm-hmm. The other interesting part that we're doing is an SDK, which will be for external consumption for developers. It will be a first one like that, because today no gateway is external. You have to integrate with them. You have to pass due diligence. They have to approve you to integrate with you. There's a whole process. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to democratize that process where any developer can go in, kind of like drag and drop. We'll have templates, we'll have microservices that they can just build whatever they want, whatever they need. There will be some requirements that they have to have, but then they can, basically build their own gateway and then plug it into whatever platform they want.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Anna, thank you for explaining all that, and I want to dive into that as well. But I just want to step back for 1 second for the viewers that are really just at the beginning steps in trying to buy their first Bitcoin or Ethereum or Avalanche in this case without having crypto before, and they see the options of a major exchange or Coinbase or a decentralized option. What are the major benefits to them in making the process decentralized for their first purchases?
Well, I think the main benefit would be the cost of it. Because if they go and use cards, it's quite expensive. So you may go use OnRamp like that a couple of times, but when you see 6% every time you do a transaction, that's quite expensive, right? So you may do it a couple of times, but you realize, oh, what is this? So it's similar to, you know, when you travel with your Visa or MasterCard to Europe and you have to spend money in a restaurant, some cards will charge you international transaction fee. And it's quite large. So you're thinking, oh, why am I doing this? I'm going to go get a card that actually covers that, right? Eventually. So you may do it because it's convenient. Card is right there. There's no KYC. So initially, the user may say, oh, this is great. But a couple of transactions later, they say, oh, this is quite expensive. So it's not sustainable. So that's really the benefit where we come in. So, and it's also, I guess the user has to be a little bit more sophisticated to actually understand that. Because on the first get-go, until they have a little bit of experience, they may not. So they need to be a little bit of not a complete noob, I would say. So it's not really for Coinbase is made literally for very, very new people that have never been, in the space. So it's a little bit different, I would say.
Definitely, and there's some implicit cost to having that hand-holding of here, we'll help you out, and we'll take a little bit while we're at it. So because often when you think of like fiat on-ramps, you're thinking of people that are buying their first coins, but there's also people that are dollar cost averaging or buying a little bit from every paycheck that they're getting in fiat currency. And you don't often think of Avalanche being the first coin that somebody buys. Normally they go for Bitcoin or Ethereum. And you did mention that you're going to be EVM compatible. I'm curious about if Bitcoin fits into the proposition as well.
Not at the moment. Right now, the roadmap is for EVM compatible chains. Possibly in the future. We'll have a lot of other problems to solve right now. So maybe next year.
Yeah, cool. And speaking of decentralizing this process, there's been fiat on-ramps for probably 10 years, 5 years in the mainstream, but no one has really done a decentralized way of and part of it I feel like is obviously the regulation part with the banks and you have to deal with them, and they probably prefer to deal with a company that is doing handholding or that is more regulated as well. But why do you think this hasn't become bigger sooner?
Well, we have received money transmission exemptions from every state except New York. Now, what's interesting about our legal framework is user is an issuer in our case. By bypassing funds flow and bypassing the issuance piece, we're just the technology that connects. So I think that's quite new because every state we spoke to, it took us a little bit of time to explain to them how a user is an issuer. They've never heard that format before. So that was quite new. So that's kind of an innovative, I guess, legal framework, I would say. And the other part is we are decentralizing specifically because once ACH settles and we mint the ERC20, right, which is the USDR receipt token, we're putting in on MPC, which is a multi-party computation. So if you're not familiar with that, it's basically like a Gnosis safe. It has multiple people who have to sign a transaction and say this transaction is confirmed. Now, because it's going to be decentralized, then there's no entity that's actually in the flow of funds, of any funds, be it USD or be it ERC20, right? Because in the first case, USD is touched by the bank only, or the user. And in the second case, it's going to be on the node validators, and you can have infinite number of those. So that's how we solved quite a few regulatory issues as well as decentralization issue.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And you mentioned about the alpha released. At what stage is it at the point where people are, everyday people can sign up and sort of connect their bank and start purchasing? Is that in the beta, or how far along is that?
So basically, if you go to METL.co, you can onboard. The onboarding is Web 2 level. Web 2 meaning anybody will understand what that looks like. Now we're building a Web 3 onboarding, which will be more for DeFi crypto native people. and that will replace the Web2 onboarding today. Okay, so we are in beta, alpha beta, it's hard determination, but you can onboard, you can pass KYC, you can transfer your funds, and you can mint the token, and you can exchange it. Right now, we are on Trader Joe and Avalanche, and you can go exchange it. This is, again, to test the flow, play. It's not just to go in and invest, right? We're still building. We're still building a lot of pieces together, so it's not, don't go and send $10,000. This is for $5 just to kind of play with it and see that it actually works and how it works.
Definitely. And I was actually going to ask about the amounts, and from what I understand, with Avalanche, and you mentioned that it's a lot cheaper, not just from the saving the intermediary costs if you have a centralized entity taking a cut, that makes it cheaper, but also the Avalanche network, I feel, is very fast and cheap to do transactions on the blockchain side. I'm curious if there, when it's all said and done, it's in the main production, is there a minimum amount that needs to be spent and a maximum amount?
No, there's no. The minimums and maximum amounts are controlled by US regulation. And because we're dealing with banks and we have a banking API, we have a banking partner, there's no limit. On cards, however, there are limits. And it was cards, that's why the transaction fees are so high, because anybody who's dealing, they're considered high-risk merchant. And that's why they get into those high fees. Well, with banks, it's a completely different scenario. So there are no limits. And of course, Avalanche doesn't have any limits. It's just a matter of how much liquidity is out there to be able to swap the tokens and the pools to be built. So like I said, there's a lot of work to be still done to be able to support all the different tokens, all the different combinations. So it's still a process and a setup that still needs to be done.
Definitely. And I'm curious on your take on the growth of the Avalanche ecosystem and sort of the choice behind, is it just because it's fast and cheap, or because of the SDKs and the integrations, or how come the first decentralized on-ramp is ideal for the Avalanche network?
They have superior technology. That's number one. They have a great team that providing us with a lot of support, which is great. And the ecosystem is very healthy, friendly. That's another important piece. Yeah, and then we're looking at others as well. But like I mentioned, we just want to do it well within one ecosystem and one chain first. Then it's a rinse and repeat. Basically, network effects. Okay.
And is there a function of, you mentioned the USD token. Is there also like a METL token or a governance token, I'm curious, involved in the ecosystem? And if there is, how would that function?
So METL token is not live yet. METL token will come, but it will come once all the pieces are built. So that's very important. We don't want to launch a token for the sake of launching a token. It has to be in a smart way. It has to have a purpose. The main purpose for the token will be for node validators to stake it. We're looking at liquid staking as well. So there has to be certain value and incentives for the ecosystem for this token to exist. Because what's the point of a token? You're creating an economy. An economy has to be self-sufficient and self-sustainable, right? And when we don't have all the pieces built yet, this token will not be used. So until that's done, it doesn't make sense to rush it, basically.
Definitely. Good point. I'm looking forward to following along through that, and more specifically because of the node validators and seeing how that's set up in a decentralized way. I feel like it's one step to have a fiat on-ramp that's decentralized and have people already familiar with Web3 using that, but setting up a node and sort of getting involved, I feel like is a whole nother level of sort of technical expertise needed. Do you feel like the groups of people that are involved with blockchain now that are sort of interested in setting up nodes and staking and master nodes, will they be incentivized to do the same on METL's ecosystem?
Right. We already in the conversations with a few of them that are supporting Avalanche ecosystem. So that's our kind of go-to first, to work with them, right? And then kind of build out, because they're the experts. They've already done this with Avalanche. They've done it well. So we obviously want to work with established, mature projects to do so.
Definitely. Good to know. And also, looking through your guys' documents, and I was curious on your reaction to Ayn Rand's prediction in the blockchain space sort of coming true, and what you think about that.
So I don't know how many people have connected to Ayn Rand yet, actually, and the engine of the world to the blockchain, right? Because it's for me, it's so real. Like, if you're familiar with her work and philosophy, right? Because what's really is happening is, especially with staking on all the different chains and all the different ecosystems, right? You have you have monetary policy, you have funds that are running through, you have a whole economy being built, right, around that. And when you're looking at governments and sovereign entities, what's the core piece that makes them powerful? It's money, right? It's money and monetary policy. Now all of this shifting in a different direction, away from it, autonomously from it, right? So that's a very interesting scenario that's actually happening. So her prediction of engine of the world, right? And then who's John Gall? Who built this engine of the world? Hello, Satoshi Nakamoto. Who is that, right? So it's interesting. So there's like a lot of parallels there, and I think what we're going to see is, because I was like literally thinking this morning that the ecosystem is so vast, like if I would go and try to calculate how many projects, how many teams are working on certain ecosystems, it's practically impossible. I don't think anybody's being able to do that. No. It's popping up left and right, so hard. So it's massive, right? And it's only going to scale, right? So, and now with the staking mechanism, right? What is staking? They're really bonds at the end of the day, right? And why do you trust bonds of the U.S. government, for example? Why? Because you trust U.S. government. Why do you trust U.S. government? Because of the taxation. That's how you. Because all taxes are inevitable. It's always going to happen. Similar here on Ethereum, for example, right? You're staking, and you know that if you're staking, you will get a dividend, right? Because there's going to be fees that's going to be switched from miners to you. So it's coming. It's not going to exist without it, right? So there's that assurance, which is very similar how you look at a U.S. bond. So, and another parallel. So it's going to be very, very interesting, and with everything going on globally in the world, and a lot of topics being divisive, right? So people are kind of looking like, I don't want too much government. I want less government. Why am I paying so much money in my taxes? So I think blockchain is that engine of the world that, right? And what was that? The book was written in 1956, right? 54 or something. Yeah. So now it's kind of coming true. It's going to be very interesting to watch, for sure.
Definitely. Super interesting, and we're just at the beginning in blockchain. Everyone's giving parallels to 1995 of the internet, which is just the very beginning. And there's still a lot to do, and there's still a lot to do with METL as well. You guys have a lot on your plate, and I'm excited to see how it grows. What is the best way for the viewers to follow along with the updates and get started with METL's alpha right now?
Yeah, so we're on Twitter, METL. Just follow us as we build and release different pieces of the technology, and also different jurisdictions. We're about to get Mexico next, so we're very excited.
Very cool. Thank you so much, Anna. I will leave the links to METL's platform as well, and the Twitter, in the description box below to make it easy for the viewers. I appreciate your insights into the industry and your info on METL, and all the best to you and your team moving forward.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.